Hello friends, welcome to my kitchen. This is the second location that I want to meet with you in on the Mama P's Crafty Creations page. I love the kitchen. It is home to me. It's not only the heart of the home, but it's kind of where I keep my heart in the home. When all else fails and I need to take care of myself, I can find a way in the kitchen for that. And it also speaks to my heart to care for those that I love in my family or outside of my family, a place where, when you can't do anything else, you can make a decent plate of food and speak your heart with that. Before we get too far, take a minute when we're done and go down to the comments under this video, because I am not a video creator. I'm not a content creator. I don't know anything about equipment or videos. So I am going to post a picture down in there of my camera setup that I'm currently using. It makes me giggle. So, hey, giggles are good, right? And today we'll giggle about how my camera is set up to take this video. Okay, since we moved here in Lee Summit, I have been making all of our own bread. Now we buy bread, we buy buns, we buy sandwich bread. Hey, Kim, how are you? So glad to see you. But I love homemade bread, and it has been one of the great nemesis of my cooking career. If it's got yeast in it, I am killing it, and it is not good. So I am going to show you what I've come up with, and I have it written here, and so I will show you the recipe, and you can get a screenshot of that if you would like to, so that you can have it to refer to. But it is a no-knead, fast rise artisan bread. I started with the artisan bread because it was a simple thing, but it was a long rise process. And then you had to cook it in a cast iron roaster or something that trapped the air. So after quite a bit of fiddling and cheating and playing around, I have this super simple recipe that you can have fresh, wonderful bread on your table in a very short time. So it's 4 simple ingredients. Now there's a little bit of disparity because I have different batches and different stages to show you. So what we're working on right here is a 1 loaf batch. And what I showed you on the paper is a 2 loaf batch. So we're going to adjust it. But in my tub here, and you need a big tub. Now you don't need a food tub like this. You just need a bowl that'll hold your stuff, okay? I have 3 cups of flour. I just use plain old all-purpose flour. You like bread flour, get bread flour. I will tell you, I've tried it with some wheat flour and other blends, not been nearly as successful. So just to my 3 cups of flour. Now, if you study much about using flour in baking, they will tell you that the only way to get a good, accurate measurement of flour is to fluff your flour with a spoon, put it in the cup, don't mash it down, and just skim it off. Now, if you're in a baking thing that is very, very specific, you need to do that. Not in this case. You don't need to. I take my flour in this jar and I kind of give it a shake to loosen it up. I scoop around in it and stir my cup. I shake off, and that is a cup of flour for me in this recipe. Okay? So we take 3 cups of flour for 1 loaf of bread, and then my measuring spoons have a half of a tablespoon size. If yours don't, you can get by with a teaspoon and a half, okay? But we are going to use a half of a tablespoon of plain old salt. Mine is a mixture of pink and white because I had 2 going and just threw them together. It doesn't matter one bit what kind it is. And the same amount of active dry yeast. So I just have Fleischmann's here, half of a tablespoon leveled off in my spoon and dumped right in there. Now, when I started making it, this is where I stopped. It was all the dry ingredients. But I kind of discovered that I liked a little flavor added to mine, and I've played around with a bunch, and I can post some combos that I like, but I keep coming back to this, which is just everything bagel seasoning, just a mix that I buy. It's exactly that. And this is totally up to you. You can be really risky with it or not, but I usually do about double a tablespoon or half a tablespoon of the others. I would do a full tablespoon of my seasoning, and in it goes. We have now completed the dry ingredient portion of our recipe. We're going to take a whisk and we're just going to combine those dry ingredients together. We're not doing, I've got my light on here for some heat and I don't know which way is better. We'll go back and forth. Just fluffing them together. It doesn't matter how you do that, but you'll want to do that. And then for this recipe, you need 1.5 cups of water. And the other rule of thumb to bread that always got me is I always killed my yeast because I used too hot of water. In this instance, you want hot water. So I let my tap run until my water is hot, steaming hot. And I don't know if you can see it, but it is actually still steaming here. So I'm just going to pour in my 1.5 cups of hot water. Now, if I was here and you weren't with me and nobody else was here, I would be sticking my hand in there to mix that up. It's how I like to do it. But since we're here together, I've got this handy dandy tool. This is called a Danish dough hook. You can use a wooden spoon. Like I said, if we weren't here together, I'd have my hands in there, but I don't want to have to get my hands clean before we go on. And we are just going to take our mess, and it looks like a mess. It just looks like a wet, gooey, gloppy mess down in there. Let me try this again. Okay, it's there. Give it a slosh and a swirl, and then we're just going to incorporate this in. Okay, and I'm just going to step back over here where I can see, and I think maybe you can see down in there a little bit, and you are just going to mix. Now, this is a wet, they call it sloggy dough, and that's just a fancy word they use for wet and gloppy, is sloggy. And you are just going to turn your dough over and over. The only thing you're accomplishing here is mixing. That's it. There's no science happening here. There's no amount of time that things need to react. You are just working your dough around until the flour has let go of the bowl. Okay, and that's what will happen. You can see right in here, I have some dry flour still. I turn my wet, gloppy, sloggy dough onto that dry flour until it is incorporated. Now, sometimes when you do this, it's going to come together that easy. And I can tell you from just a little bit of experience, that means it's a little extra wet. Should be just a little bit of work to get the dry flour in. It would be just fine the way it is. It would bake up just fine. You could fix it at the next step. But now that I've done it a while, I've kind of just learned to take a couple of tablespoons of flour, if it just came together too easy, and stir that in. I want to have to work just a little bit to get the flour in. And that's because I did not measure as carefully as I could have with the flour. I would rather do this than spend my time spooning and leveling and worrying about the details. Okay, so we just keep turning that around until we have a dough that wants to pull away from the sides and we have no more dry flour remaining. Okay, so gross, right? It looks terrible. Delicious. It's exactly what you want. So I take a second. I don't think it matters, but I always go around the edges and try to get my dough sitting on the bottom of my tub. So here I have, could be in any kind of bowl. There's my dough. I'm going to set this in a warm place. I set it on top of my stove with the oven off and my light on. Okay, that's how long, that's how I do it. If your house is warmer than mine, you can do it in another location. As long as it's, not going to get anything in it and it's kind of warm. I have a lid. You can put the lid on tight or you can put the lid on loose, okay? Lid goes on and you're gonna leave this dough set for 2 hours. That's all the rise time it takes. When you do some of the other no-knead breads, you're gonna use just a fraction of the yeast that we used in here, but it's gonna have to sit like 18 hours to raise. And I could never get that scheduled right so that we had bread when I wanted bread. So about 2 hours in a warm place, it will double in size. So that's why one of these kind of tubs is easy for me. I can kind of see how it comes up. Now we eat a lot of bread here. So the batch that I have that's been sitting for 2 hours now is the 2 loaf size. So it started out with just twice this much in there. See that? And now after 2 hours, my dough is this large. You see that? And it's super bubbly and airy. It looks like this on the top. It is still, to any normal bread baker, a sloppy, sloggy mess. Okay? For us, perfect. Now, I have a butcher block countertop, which means it's just wood. So I put down some parchment paper. If you have a good hard seal countertop, you don't have to do that. I put some flour out on it. You're going to need some flour. So I take this sloppy, stringy. See how looks like, almost looks like spider webs up in there. You see that? And we're just going to take the whole mess right out of the bowl. We just scrape it. Kimberly, your kids would love this, but you don't want them to love it because it's a mess. But it's fun. Okay. So we plop that out and it is sticky. You see that? Sticking to my hand, pulling up. So I have some flour under it. I'm going to just sprinkle a little bit, less than 1/4 cup of flour on top, and I'm just going to kind of pat that flour into my dough. Now this is the most work that this bread is going to ever require. And it's going to take a couple of minutes, but you are just going to take and lift. I'm trying to see how well you can see because this is a challenge. And like I said, when you see my setup, you'll know why. And it is sticking here to my parchment paper. So I'm going to put a little row of flour right there where it's sticking. And I'm just going to scrape it. There's going to be a number of times when you're doing this that you think it is never going to stop being a gooey, sticky mess. Trust me, it will, and it won't take very long. As it's a gooey, sticky mess, sprinkle it with flour and turn it back the other way on itself. We are kneading it as much as it gets kneaded, and we are getting enough flour worked into it to where it no longer sticks to the parchment. I have this little bench scraper. You can use a spatula. This one is extra messy, so I'm just using it to kind of pick that dough up off that paper since it is, this one gives sloggy a bad name. It's a little extra wet. Okay, now if you can see now kind of what we have here, we have a ball now already that is almost not sticking to the parchment paper. And that's all you want. And you just want to roll him around and you will expose different areas where he's still sticking together. And as you just slowly knead your dough, rolling him around, I just roll the whole mess around. I'm not a strong-handed person, so I'm not gonna be the one who can really manhandle it a bunch. Once I get it to where I've gotten all those sticky spots covered, I am done kneading. Okay, so I'm just rolling it a few extra times. If your dough when you start is a little drier, this process goes a little bit faster. Okay. So this is a 2 loaf roll. Okay, I've got it now. It is kind of bouncy feeling. It rises back when I punch a hole in it. Okay, so we are ready. I'm really arguing with that. I don't know what's better. Okay, so now I'm going to take that bench scraper. You can use a knife or whatever, and I'm going to cut it in half because, like I said, we got 2 loaves. Now, where I cut it in between here, it's going to be sticky again because I've exposed an edge that doesn't have the flour worked in it. So I'm going to put a little bit of flour right there, and I am just going to fold about 4 times. It doesn't matter if you go front to back, side to side, in which order you do. If it wants to stick, back to your paper, we just add some more flour, okay? And I've had some go in the oven really wet, and I've had some go in the oven a little bit drier. It's all good. Okay, now, there are lots of ways to bake your bread, but the easiest way, in my humble opinion, is just a good old loaf pan. You probably have one. This is just a bread loaf pan. And I've lined it with some parchment that hangs over the side. Once I can handle my dough, I just kind of smooth the edges around until the top looks pretty. And I just plop it in that pan. Now this is an artisan bread, so it doesn't have that perfect top, and that's okay. Hey Rissa, good to see you, sister. So now we have our dough in our pan, ready to go, and now we have the second one. Okay, and this one's got a little bit of wet in it. Oh good, I'm glad you can see pretty well. Is it better with the light on over my stove or off? Is it better this way or the other way? And I'll adjust it. It was just on running the dough. So I am just rolling, kind of like Play-Doh. I'm rolling my dough through a bed of flour just until it doesn't stick to me or to the paper. I'm incorporating just enough flour to where I can handle it. Okay, this is why we don't have to be so exact in our measurements and stuff. Oh good, I'm glad. Light off is better. Good to know. Because you will get a big tickle out of how this this filming rig is all set up here. I'll post it. But I told you all we could do these videos or we could plan to do these videos, but I really couldn't do both, right? Either got to just go or not. Okay, so loaf number 2, kind of bumpy, kind of lumpy, won't make one bit of difference, plopped into the pan. Okay, so I have my 2 loaves, and my oven is currently on because we're going to keep going with the process. But if we were doing it at the same thing, we would not have our oven on yet. You would just cover these with a towel or a piece of parchment. See ya, Kimberly. And we would let them rest. And I let them rest exactly where they are for 30 minutes. Okay? And then you put your oven on to 425, and you want to give your oven a full 30 minutes of heating up. Now my oven heats to 425 in about 15 minutes, but for the bread, for some crazy reason, it does better if it gets the extra heat. You want your oven hot, okay? And then at the end of an hour of its rest, your bread dough will look like this. Okay, it's risen above the line of the pan. This one's got a really pretty dome on it, and it is ready for the oven. We don't have to cut any seams or decoration, although you can if you want to. Certainly optional at this point, but it is now ready to go into your very hot, incredibly preheated 425 degree oven. And I just put it in here on my middle shelf. And that loaf of bread that size will bake in about 40 minutes. I always give it 40. Then you're just going to look at it. Is it nice and brown? Is it really crusty looking on top? And does it, if you tap on the top of a good artisan loaf of bread, it will have a hollow sound. I'm going to try to turn you just a little bit. Okay. So this is what's left of the bread I have here at the house and why I'm baking bread today. But I thought this might give you an idea of what you're looking for in your finished loaf. Can you hear that? It has a hollow sound. Even after it is cut on, it will have a hollow sound. It will have a beautiful, airy kind of crumb. It's a little crustier of a bread, especially around the edges, and more chewy in the center. So this is what we're going for. And when I start getting these loaves processed out of the oven, I will take some photos of our actual bread today and post them. Now, my favorite is the everything bagel seasoning. Another favorite for our family is an onion and dill. And when I do that, I put almost a tablespoon of dill in and a couple of tablespoons of just dried minced onions. I put it right in with the flour and then add the water and let it set. And by the time my dough is ready for the oven, then it is good to go. It's softened up those onions and they're ready to cook. Hey, Jan, it's good to see you. How are you doing, sweetie? Okay, but the flavors are your choice. I've put some feta cheese stirred into it. That is pretty good. You can do a cheddar cheese bread if you want to stir in some cheddar shreds, some garlic, whatever flavors that you like into the bread, and it will turn out pretty good no matter what you do. When it comes out, you can brush it with a little bit. You can tell by the loaf I have back here, I don't usually do that, but you could brush it with a little bit of melted butter and sprinkle another layer of seasonings over it. You can also make it in different shapes. You can use it. I've not tried it with rolls. I'll just be honest. I don't know how it would work, but I have made it in small bread loaves when I've taken them somewhere with me where I needed a smaller loaf. I've also made it in mini loaves where everybody had kind of their own loaf at the table. Makes a delicious bread bowl for soup. You just shape it into a round. You get two nice bread bowls out of a half batch of dough. Shape them in a round, put them on a cookie sheet with some parchment, bake them up, tear a hole in the top, pour your soup in, or whatever you're having with your bread, and you're good to go that way. We made pretzels with it, and it was not too bad. I did not boil them. I just baked them off, so they were a crusty, dry pretzel. All right, that is all there is to it. Now, there's a lot of complicated stuff we could make in the kitchen. Probably not with me as your teacher, because I'm not a complicated cook. I love to cook, but it shouldn't be the hardest thing in my day. It should be a blessing to me, and hopefully a blessing to whoever gets to eat it. So my bread is, I love the bread. I toast it every morning. I put some nice butter on it. I like an avocado with that. Makes a delicious cheese bread. If you slice it, put a little butter on it, and make like an open-faced grilled cheese, it is delicious as garlic bread. When it starts to get a little bit older, it is incredible for croutons and breadcrumbs just ground up and ready to go. So if you want to make some bread and you want it to be easy and you want to be successful, because you really can't fail with this, I'm going to put this up here again. So if you would like to see the recipe, you can screenshot that. I should have flipped the camera around, and I didn't think about it. And sometimes you can after you start, and sometimes you can't. Oh, that's not the around we wanted at all. Try that. Okay, sorry, it's going to be backwards. All right, so you can keep that fast and simple. I'll also put a picture down in the comments with the bread. All right, kitchen fun. I've got a whole list of recipes I want to work through with you, things that I think my kids will enjoy having instructional on later. Thanks for hanging out with me for just a little bit today. We're going to have some great hot bread with our dinner tonight in a while, now that I got all these different batches going. But hope you guys have a great day. Janet, so good to see you, man. Do I miss you? I miss seeing you. I miss your spirit and your smile. All right? Take care, guys. I'll talk to you again soon. Happy baking.